All right. Thank you all very much for coming out on Monday morning. We're excited to have you all here. Are you ready to do some science?
Yeah.
Woo! Okay. I know it's Monday morning, energy is lower than usual, but we're still going to have some fun, all right? So we're going to do some brief introductions, and then we're going to get right into it with some demos. So,
good morning, everyone. My name is Xavier Ashe. Hacking since the 80s and information security since the 90s. I'm, bring a lot of the information security background and obviously a privacy advocate. So just happy to be with y'all here this morning. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Sheff. I'm a computer scientist, and my research is primarily in distributed systems and security. So I am happy to be here to introduce some people to some of the science that we do.
All right, my name is Hirsch. I'm a professor of computer science at the State University of New York in Buffalo, and my research is in security and communication, fundamentals of communication. And I think we're going to start with a demonstration, and I would love to have a volunteer from the audience come up to help us with it. Yeah, please.
Volunteer.
We're going to set up this.
We need to pour the mic.
Got it. Sorry. All right. This needs a button pressed. All right. And what is your name?
Dylan.
All right, Dylan. Thanks very much for helping us out. So what we have here is a computer. I know it doesn't look much like a computer. But it is one. It's a very simple computer. What does it have? It has memory. And in that memory, we have some RAM, 2 slots of RAM, and a simple program. What does that program do? Well, we're going to take some input from the audience. They're going to ask you they're going to tell you to write down something. You're going to write it down, and you're going to put it in your memory so that you can remember what it is. Otherwise, you'd forget it before you go on to the next step. You're then going to just take that input, you're going to write it down backwards, and you're going to put it here, and then we're going to try to make you pronounce it, which is going to be really fun, I think, for everybody.
Not for me.
Please try to keep it clean. It is before 10 p.m. We're just going to run this once and see what it looks like. So let's start. What we have here is what's called a program counter. This is just a little part of memory that tells the computer what the next instruction it's supposed to run is. So my lovely assistant here is going to help move this program counter for you. See that you know what to do next. Because we know counting to 3 is hard. Okay, you're a human, you can count to 3. Computers are very dumb. They can't. Not without help. All right, so what's the first instruction, Dylan?
Write down what I...
You're supposed to put an input into memory spot A. Please write it there so that we can do this again. So we're going to need an input. Does anyone have an input for Dylan?
Frodo.
Okay. No, please write it on the sticky note and put the sticky note in there.
That's going to be easier.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That way when we do it again, it's not still there.
Can't see.
All right. Now that that's been done, notice that the program counter moves down to the next instruction. All right. What's your current instruction?
Put reverse name into memory slot B.
Okay. And now it goes down again.
Read contents of memory slot B out loud.
All right. Into the microphone.
Odor.
Odorf. All right. Yes. So that's the program. That's how the computer works. It's a very simplified model. It's a simplified model, but it's actually not that simplified. This is how computers actually run programs in memory. Of course, this is when things go well. What happens when things go badly? So instead of getting something from the audience, you're going to get something from us now. My Mr. Burns here. All right. So, what's your first instruction, Dylan?
Put input name into memory slot A.
And it turns out my name is Slutty Barkfast, but it's not just Slutty Barkfast. It's Slutty Barkfast to launch the missile. So, if you can just put it in memory slot A. Yeah, just starting. So, lining up with the slot. So, starting here. So, notice that a slot memory is not actually a square. It just tells you where to start putting things. It doesn't tell you where to stop. So it just keeps going when it's too long. And the memory pointer kind of moves down. All right, what's your next instruction?
I think it's it's launch the missile.
Oh, do we have any missiles?
I think we do.
Launch the missile! Believe it or not, this is actually the most common attack in practice. This is exactly what happens. This is what's called a buffer overflow attack. It is the most common CVE in practice. Thank you very much for your help, Dylan. Everybody give Dylan a round of applause. So, yeah, there is a list of attacks that you can find in software, known as CVEs. The most common CVE in practice is the buffer overflow. This is fairly simplified. Modern day versions of it are more complicated because people try to defend against them by doing things like writing your memory in random places so that it's harder to predict. But the bad guys still get around it and still do this. The best defense is working in a memory safe language. That way you know that you can't write to places in memory you didn't mean to. I'm going to put this portable mic down so that we can have anybody come up and ask a question that wants to.
For what it's worth, in our example, a memory safe language would be one where we make sure that all the inputs are the right size for the memory slots before we stick them in there, unless it becomes hard to overwrite things.
All right, Xavier, I think this is your first time seeing us do that, right?
Yeah, that was great. I love the visuals.
Yeah. Do you have any commentary on this in practice?
No, it's really good to kind of visualize and put it together because I think that a lot of people, do not understand that just how simple the inner workings of a computer is. It's like, me being old, I grew up with it, so I as all of these technologies came in place, it's like, oh, it makes sense. But most of the people nowadays kind of put it all together and say, hey, this is just some magical computer stuff. But the bottom line is that when you break it down, what we're talking about is this. We have this expectation that the program should work X. And then we have us hackers like me going, all right, how many different ways can I break that, right? It comes down to just the same simple as like, hey, this is the way that you're going to stand in line to get into this panel. And you're like, but I could just go over here, right? And those countermeasures is really important, on the computer security side to figure out. And that cat and mouse game has been, my entire career. It's figuring out ways of, trying to make it a little bit harder for the hackers to do the things that they want to do and stepping back, and then they get more creative and we go back. So it's just, really a great way to put it all together.
Yeah, most of my career is finding ways that people like Xavier punch holes in things and trying to come up with walls that you can't punch holes in. Then he finds another place I haven't put up a wall yet and finds a hole in it and punches a hole in it. And then I go back and try to fix it. And that's how we move forward. If anybody has any questions, we'd love to take them up at the microphone here.
It's pretty clear.
All right, good. Anyone want to see another demo then? All right, good.
We can do another classic.
Yeah. I think we need 2 volunteers for this one.
We need 2 volunteers for this one. We need someone who's going to be a website and someone who's going to try and be a user of that website.
We have one here. Please come on up. And anybody else? Yeah, please.
All right.
I got the text, the packets here. I got the spare packet. These. All right. As we all know, the internet is a series of tubes. So
Got a moving camera.
Yeah, I'm just through these tubes run information in small units called packets, for which we're going to use these. The contents of our packets will be written on little paper strips. And for what it's worth, our website will be using a blue pen. Who wants to be a website? And our user will be using a black pen. If we have one around.
We definitely do. Like this one right here.
For my part, I'm going to play the part of the internet.
All right.
Hi,
What's your name?
Internet.
Call me Matt.
Matt. Hi, Matt. And you are?
Daniel.
Everybody give Matt and Daniel a round of applause. All right. So the internet, of course, being a series of tubes, is not a person. So we're going to hide him here.
What?
So when you access a website, the first thing you do is ask the internet, can I please have a channel, a tube that connects me to that website? So, would you please ask for a connection?
Battery died.
Battery life? Look at the student leaves.
Can I have a connection to the website?
All right. Leave this. All right, as you can see, we have a single tube that connects our user to the website. The user can then ask for things like a login page, and I'm going to have to go grab that. All right, you can see here we have a request from the user, written in black, that just asks to be allowed to log in. When they want to make that request, they wrap it up in a packet. Our packets are Easter eggs. So you can just roll that up and put that in there. And when you are sending stuff to a website, your computer is doing this process of taking your request, writing it down, putting it in a form that can be digested by the internet, and then shoving it in the tube. And indeed, we have a request there. And the website can respond.
Let me log in. What is your password?
Very good. So he's going to put that in the packet. So he's been asked for his password. So he can write down whatever password he wants. Please don't use your real password. We are in a room full of hackers, I'm sure. They will remember. Xavier is dangerous.
And it's being recorded.
And it's being recorded, so please don't use your real password.
This is not my PW.
All right, is that a success or a failure?
Well, if it's not his password, it's obviously a failure, so I guess I'm going to react to the request.
Yeah, there we go. So we get back a response. All right, and that's how everything works when things go well. Of course, where do things go wrong? Nobody says the internet has to give you a single tube. Maybe there's a man in the middle. So if we can reset the questions so that people have what they need. When Daniel here asks for a connection to the website, he might be given a connection.
Oh, can I have a connection to the website?
Thank you. He's given a connection here. The website is given the other side of a connection.
If you, okay, I thought we were doing in different order, but okay.
Oh.
You'll have to find the two.
have to reboot the internet just real quick.
Too many kids.
Sorry. All right. We have a bit of a problem. So now, when we get a login message, he can send that through. And the internet will send that over to the website. Man in the middle is fine with that getting through in this case.
Let me log in.
All right, we get a request for a password.
What is your password? Or packet segmentation errors.
Yes, those are a problem. So that goes through. The request for the password gets through to the user. That was an extraneous packet, I guess.
Confirm your bank number.
Yeah, you've been asked to, log in with your bank number. This is a normal thing to be asked for, right?
Obviously, it's the mail.
Hey, can you hold it up for the audience to see? Does anyone notice anything wrong with it? It's written in red. Uh-oh. Of course, he doesn't notice that. Why would he notice that? It's just what he's been asked to give. So you can log in with your bank number if you want to.
And here, you can use your real bank number. It's fine.
Yeah. Just let us all know. All right. And we send that through, and of course, the problem here is that underneath this, the man in the middle gets to read what's going on. He's got this all up for him. We could solve this problem in a simple way. When he asks for your login, what is your password, he can simply sign the back of it with his blue Sharpie. Using a cryptographic signature. In this case, it's something he's written on the back. Daniel, of course, can recognize the website's signature, and so won't accept this request for a bank number from the man in the middle who doesn't know how to sign for the website. So all the man in the middle can do at that point is pass it on.
Oh,
Of course, I would point out that cryptographic signatures are a little bit more complicated math under the hood, but for our purposes, we're going to assume that you can append something to a message and know that that message was written by the person that you want to hear it.
Did you want to do?
He has to send me a password. He has to send back a password.
Yeah, please send back a password. Make sure you sign it. Make sure you sign it. Wouldn't want to send him an unsigned packet.
Do I sign it as well?
Yeah,
If you want to.
everything is signed. Yeah. It still gets to know his password, so that's a problem. And of course, the big problem here is that the 2 still goes through our man in the middle here, our attacker. So how do we solve that? Well, so far we've been sending messages that get sent back and forth. Here, we actually get the interaction with the website that you wanted. We've prevented the attacker from just like showing a completely different website. But he still gets to see everything that's going on. So, indeed, it sees that that password was correct. So what do we do instead? Well, you'll notice here that we have two different tubes, and that's what's allowing this to happen. How does he know that these are two different tubes instead of the single tube that we have at the beginning? Remember, while we've been showing you under the hood, we're still hidden. So what we can do is we can say, we're going to ask you to sign this tube.
IPSec. Yes, so.
So I'm just going to hold this up so that people can see. Now the tube itself is signed. So I'm going to give this back to you. Now, when he goes to get the tube,
As per connection.
you have to ask for a connection.
And I have a connection to the website. Thank you.
Indeed, he knows that that tube was signed by the website, so there's no way it's going through anybody else. And this is, of course, here we literally have a tube. But this is, of course, all done with fancy math under the hood, using cryptographic signatures and other encryption techniques. So, big round of applause for our two.
Well, there are two here represent what can be referred to as cryptographic channels or sessions. The most popular protocol for this is called TLS, transit layer security. And they're, generally speaking, pretty good, lightweight ways of making sure that two endpoints are talking to each other, and everything that anyone who's handling the content in between sees is opaque, it's encrypted. You can, in fact, sign TLS channels pretty directly. It's a digital signature matter. When you open a connection to a website that uses HTTPS, you're opening an HTTPS channel that goes through, can go through a TLS session. And indeed, that TLS session is signed. That little block that appears in the URL bar is the signature for the corresponding website. And everything that you communicate with the website, everything that appears on the main part of the web browser is the stuff that comes through the TLS channel. Generally speaking, this works pretty well. But if you don't have that activated, if your website is not using proper end-to-end security like that, if things are not signed properly, you can start to get the kind of integrity failures we had at first, where the man in the middle was able to just send false information. And even if things are signed properly, you can get snooping. You can get confidentiality failures, where the man in the middle is able to read stuff that they probably shouldn't read, like passwords. I would point out that every captive portal, every time you log into a Wi-Fi and it has to pop up with some terms and conditions in its own website where it has like ads, every single one of those is a man in the middle attack. Usually they're bald-faced man in the middle attacks because they're not trying to pretend to be the legitimate
That's
website.
relatively benign. For
Yeah,
they
yeah.
are.
But
Usually they're relatively benign.
yeah, it's actually true. When your computer connects or your phone connects to one of those Wi-Fi's, it tries to go and access the internet, and the man in the middle there, this main the AP, that access point, takes the information, says no, never mind, I'm going to give you this portal, right? And so it doesn't try to trick you, but it's still the same basic thing that they described.
Yeah. So in this hotel, Hilton does act like a man in the middle and attacks your packets. Now, it does so for reasons that aren't trying to trick you into giving away your website or your bank account or your password or whatever it is that they want to get from you.
But there's a lot of actually good uses for man in the middle. So like I said, I'm on the enterprise security side. I work for a bank, and there's a lot of times in which we need to do man in the middle stuff. So CLS has been enhanced to be able to support this in a legitimate way. So the newest version of TLS that we talk about is 1.3. That's the current standard. And with 1.3, it's got this great thing where you can't take a copy of the packet and decrypt it offline, right? And so what we were seeing here is that the packets were going through, but when he pulled that packet out and decrypted it offline, that is something that the previous versions of TLS supported. If you had that encryption key, you could actually decrypt that offline. Now with TLS 1.3, you have to be part of that certificate chain. So every little hop along the way has to be trusted. And that's why, that's how, like I said, the cat and mouse game, we've continually improved TLS over the years to now we still can support TLS, but the end user is going to know that there is at least something in the middle that allows for that in those scenarios in which, you need that level of security.
Yeah. Again, if anybody has any questions, please, we'd love to have them up at the microphone.
Absolutely.
Perhaps you covered this already, but is this on?
Is this?
Okay. When I log on to my bank, I go through a VPN. Is that necessary?
Great question. So just make sure everybody heard. He's asking about VPNs. All right. So the demonstration here was this tunnel or this tube, right? And the tube itself represented a TLS tunnel. And TLS is going to be present. The vast majority of websites have TLS.
If your bank does not, get a different bank.
And what's even great, and just to plug EFF, since we're in the EFF chat, is that Let's Encrypt is one of those programs that was funded and made by EFF. And Let's Encrypt was basically an ability for normal hobbyists, from anyone from just trying to start up a website in their basement to enterprise level stuff, allows for that, doing that TLS encryption, right, and give you those certificates and provides that. So with TLS is usually good enough. And so the question is when do you need a VPN? So there are things that I can, even if I can't decrypt the data, I can still learn a whole lot about the conversation just by looking at what's called metadata or other types of things like DNS and other things that gets requested. And so if you're doing something that is, a little bit questionable, that you absolutely don't want to make sure that nobody in the middle knows about, then you might want to consider a VPN. But I'm going to challenge, what is that? Right? What's in between my home internet connection and this website? I've got an ISP, right? We got Charter, we got Comcast and whatnot. Yeah, they might glean some information off of the websites that I hit. They might not know my password, may not know the content, but if I, like to do, certain things, that might be, collected and either sold or given to,
Law
authorities,
enforcement, yeah.
law enforcement.
In some sense, they can see which direction the connections are going. They may be able to glean, for example, that you made a connection to the bank.
And they can see the pattern of communication. So, we were taking these eggs and putting them through these tunnels. I can just sit there and count how many eggs go in which direction when. And I can actually gain quite a bit of information from that.
And then also the protocols that get taught, right? So BitTorrent still is a big place where people download illegal content, and so if they just see BitTorrent at all, right, doesn't matter who you're connecting to, they can kind of assume that it's bad. So yeah, so there are certain times where you're doing things that you might want to have hidden. So that would be a use case of VPN. It doesn't provide a whole lot of extra security because most of us, our threat models aren't the ISPs, right? And so, but you've got to take a look at what you're doing on the internet and understand how the technology improves your security this much in this particular way and whether or not it's worth it.
So I will say, I don't use a VPN when I'm accessing my bank from home.
Correct.
But if I'm at a hotel and I need to access my bank, I will often use a VPN. Why? Because, look, at the end of the day, as much as I don't like my ISP at home, I live in New York, we have a monopoly on ISPs, it's bad. They're my ISP, I've put a lot of trust in that relationship, I have to. I don't necessarily trust the hotel as much as I trust my VPN provider, right? And so that's really where the question comes in, is who do I want to have access to that pattern? I don't get to make it so that nobody does, but I can change who it is, and that's what the VPN does for you.
But regardless, they're only seeing metadata, correct?
Yes, all we're talking about is metadata here. All they're saying is metadata, but I want to caution that word all. As somebody put it in the Kalia panel that I was on earlier, we kill people based on metadata in the United States.
Exactly.
So
Assuming,
I
why is it that you have to worry about it?
Yeah, come on up to the mic as we're recording.
I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's great conversation.
Then given the security, why do I have to be so careful about, why do I have to be so careful about using, like not going to an airport or not using one of those Wi-Fi's, so, which I never do.
There are a couple of things I would worry about here. One is not all websites have TLS, despite the best efforts of the EFF and Let's Encrypt. Unfortunately, some just don't use an appropriate HTTPS connection. And in that case, you can do a man-in-the-middle attack. And in particular, like literally the Wi-Fi router you're connecting to is an excellent place to perform a man-in-the-middle attack. If you operate through a VPN, what you're doing is establishing an encrypted channel between you and the VPN. You've got, I don't know, Proton VPN or something, you're making an encrypted channel to their server, wherever that is, and then all of your traffic, even other encrypted channels, goes through that. So it prevents someone along the way between you and the VPN from doing a man-in-the-middle attack in the case that you're going for an unsecured thing. It also hides certain metadata, like which direction your packets are going, what type of packets, actually can't hide how many. And sometimes that metadata is valuable depending on who you are or what you're doing.
You can hide how many, but nobody wants to.
Yeah.
Hiding how many is expensive. Because what you have to do is you have to send a lot of packets so that you never want to send it anymore. And that way nobody can tell how many packets you're sending.
And there's also the consideration of other, insecure things, right? It's like, yes, if the website and the out protocol that you're using is secure, it's fine. But there's all sorts of other types of ways of hacking, including like session hijacking, other types of things like that, or just tricking the end user. We talked about that portal that pops up that says, hey, log in, accept the terms, right? What if that portal popped up and looked exactly like the website you're trying to hit? So there's a type of attack called a evil twin attack where you set up your own little hardware that looks exactly like the Starbucks, and you can connect and you can do other types of man-in-the-middle type attacks, not just breaking the encryption, but other ways of tricking the end user. So just the encryption protects you some, but not all, and that's why VPN just helps a little bit more.
And how does all this change if you're going through your cellular network as opposed to Wi-Fi?
It doesn't. It's just who you're trusting. Are you trusting your ISP or are you trusting your cell phone provider?
Who is an ISP?
Who's an ISP, right? But for most of us, they're not the same ISP. So, maybe you trust one more than the other. That's up to you.
Next question from a random person.
No connection to EFF at all. So one of the projects that EFF did to help encrypt the web was CertBot, right? And so prior to CertBot, then you need to go to a certification authority, another trusted entity, right, to be able to encrypt your website. So now with CertBot, you can sign your own certs, right? So how do I know that, just because my message is encrypted, the other important part is to make sure that it's encrypted to the person who I think I want to be communicating with. So how do I know that the person that I'm sending my information to is the person I intend to be sending my information to?
Yeah, we used to have answer that question by using a third party, right? And so there's these big companies like VeriSign that said, hey, you got to pay us money, and we're going to be the trusted third party to vet everybody and make sure when you go to bank.com that is actually bank.com that you're connecting to. The problem is that there's a money situation and scalability, and there were some security issues. There's still people and companies that got hacked, and so there were these type of companies that did not provide the best security. And so like I said, EFF has set up in a way to be able to then, I can stand up a server at home, spin it up, automatically connect up to, using CertBot and Let's Encrypt, and I can get a completely signed certificate within seconds, right? It's all automatic. So the question is how do you know that you're trusting the end user? And a lot of times we have moved the need to do authentication, is what you're saying, like, am I talking to the right endpoint, has been moved away from the TLS technology, and we do that verification in other ways now, right? We've moved it to the authentication stack, right? I'm going to be using live.com or some of the shared logons to be able to get to that. There's other security tools that help you know that you're connecting to the right place. But doing things like keeping your system patched, and having that local, whether it's Windows Defender or something else, that kind of helps look for those type of tricks where that common way of tricking the end user is good countermeasures.
So I guess I want to break down some of this question to a little bit more basic terms. If you're an end user and you're trying to figure out if the signature on the connection you just established actually connects to the person you really wanted to talk to, you need to have some notion of what the person you really wanted to talk to signature looks like. And in practice, that corresponds to something like knowing their public key, which is a particular piece of information that represents the signing ability. But public keys are not names of websites, so you need some correlation between the two. In practice, what we originally set up when these things were set up was a series of certificate authorities. These would be trusted people who would have trusted public keys that everybody would just have to know. And indeed, if you look in your browser settings somewhere, there's a big list of trusted certificate authorities. And they would sign off on statements that say that things like this public key goes with this website name, at least for the next week, or in a few cases for the next 10 years. And then you would use those statements. Often those statements are like the first packet that comes through a connection, so you can learn on the fly. You use those statements to know that the person you're talking to is the person you wanted to talk to. You might wonder if certificate authorities can be trusted, or if they ever hacked or perverted. They are. It's happened. This has been a classic.
One thing, was anyone here at the Stuxnet panel the other day? We had a panel on the history of Stuxnet. One thing we didn't get into there, but is a really important part of that history, is that they used some certifications from Taiwanese companies. Now you might ask, how did people that were almost sure Israel and America get Taiwanese certificates? Well, the two certificates came from companies in the same industrial park. We're pretty sure some agent just went in there with a USB key and managed to get their certificates off their computers. There is no perfect solution to these sorts of things. These things are always trackable, even with that sort of third-party data.
And one of the new ways that we're trying to improve is the length of certificate, how long a certificate is valid, right? So he's talking about, like, we used to be able to do 10-year certificates.
Yeah.
I think right now it's either 4 or 5 years. But what's crazy? Yeah, it is over the next 4 years. The certificate, all the people who do certificates, put all the technical specifications and said we're going to reduce that to 37 days. So by the time we get to, I think it's 2029, certificates will only be valid for a little over a month. And if you're in IT, think about how many times you are updating certificates in your software, right?
You really want to automate that.
It is time to automate.
Place where a human can fail.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you want. I mean, automation helps that human failure. I mean, everybody's got outages for certificates. Even the big boys still have that problem. But just want to throw that out.
Yeah, real quick, I want to touch on the metadata issue because you kind of glossed over it. Metadata is who you were talking to, when, and for how long. So if you get a call from your doctor the last 5 minutes, then you call the pharmacy for 2, your girlfriend for 10, your wife for an hour, and then you call your lawyer. You don't know what you said, but you can make some conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, it can. Those are absolutely, I think, the major forms of metadata for telecommunications.
We can make it worse.
We can make it worse.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like you talk about telecom metadata, right? So when we talk about those packets, the little eggs, right? There's specifications that have all sorts of fields on the headers and footers of those packets, and that's what we're talking about metadata. It's anything that's not in the payload inside the egg, but on the outside of the egg, just to be able to get it. And there's a lot of really valuable data.
And there's work trying to do things like encrypt some of the header data. But the problem is that header data has to be organized. Otherwise, people don't know how to read it. And that organization is exploitable. So there's only so much you can do about allowing people to collect metadata. They are going to be able to collect it.
One of my favorite hacks from security conferences in the last few years was looking at the size of packets, specifically during voice recordings, because it turns out that speaking generally produces more packets than not speaking, because we have fancy audio encoding that shrinks low information sections to low amounts of packets. And you can pick up the cadence of individual voices from this. So if you've got an Amazon device that's streaming even encrypted audio from your home to somewhere else, you may be able to tell who's home.
Or if anybody's on.
For one.
Hello.
Hello.
I am not a hacker, but if I was, VPNs, I don't need to crack them. It takes a lot of resources and they break anyway, right? So if you throw an egg in there, if I try to break the tunnel, I break everything. Everything is lost.
Right.
But that tunnel he had doesn't protect you and you. So I just hack you guys.
Yep, and
Right.
that's, and you're also.
The data has to come to your machine.
And you also have to trust the VPN provider, because basically what you're doing is you're paying for a man in the middle. And and sometimes that helps security, and sometimes it don't. If you buy a VPN from an unscrupulous threat actor, they can then collect all that metadata on you and possibly do man in the middle decryption. So VPNs are not a solution for everything. It is particular threats will help you reduce some risk. Just do not listen to the podcast and the advertisements.
Yes,
you don't need a VPN for everything. But there's some good use cases.
But they sell VPN as a holy grail, you know.
It's popular. Age, so the biggest use case right now is the age verification, right? It used to be, to get to see the stuff in other regions of the world, but now it's
It's to get away from the UK.
yeah, or states, right? So
Yeah.
we've got
Or
individual
states.
states that, if your particular, source of adult entertainment now is blocked in Georgia, and you really want to see that content, that's the other use case of VPN. And when you've got that type of motivation, you just pick the most, secure one, right? And so, if you guys care about this stuff, you're here on a Monday, you're listening, we're not you're not preaching to you guys, but what I do want you to do is take this information and you hear, you understand it, but spread the word, right? It's you've got friends and family that don't completely understand that I need a VPN for everything, right? Is if they go and buy some cheap Chinese or North Korean VPN or free VPN, is that you are possibly making your security worse.
Part of what I think all of us, I'll speak for all of us, but I guess you can correct me if I'm wrong, would like you to get out of this is that it's important not just to understand some magic recipes. Magic recipes will change. You have to understand why these things work and kind of what they're doing in order to understand things like, when is it appropriate to use a VPN? When is it not, right? What are you doing? Are you making it so that people can't tell your metadata? No, you're changing who you're trusting to see your metadata. That's all you're doing. Now, is there times and places where that's really an important thing to do? Absolutely.
I have stayed in some sketchy hotels
Right.
that did weird things with the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but not always what you need.
Pulling on the thread of VPN advertising, two-part question. What is military grade VPN?
Marketing.
and
military.
And what should I look for if I'm trying to figure out if I should trust a VPN, right? What are some things I should look for?
So on the military grade, so it is really interesting. NIST sets the standards for our military.
People know what NIST is.
NIST,
Institute of Standards and Technology.
Yeah.
All right, so they publish a lot of specifications, and you can use those specifications to say military grade or government grade, But the answer is it's marketing. But there is a real thing where you can use that level of encryption. It's just what's standard right now, and sometimes NIST is a little bit behind, and so it may not be. If you've been in the military, you always laugh when somebody says military grade because you know what military grade is like. Military grade is not the best,
The
right?
bare minimum that the military is willing to buy.
What was the second part of that? What was the second?
How do you know whether you can trust a VPN?
Or at least what should I look for?
Things that you would like them to do would be not keep logs, so not remember your metadata. Would be have lots of endpoints around the world so that you can get, the version of Netflix in Australia that includes Hulu. It would be to be fast and not throttle your connections, especially when you're, especially based on what you're connecting to, so that they're pretty neutral as far as.
But in terms of how to trust them, I don't know a better solution than the standard solutions in the marketplace, which are either have some other reason to trust them. Hey, these are my friends, they set up a VPN, I know that they're going to treat me right. Or go with one that people trust for some other reason, and who you choose to listen to for that is going to be dependent on what is important to you, I suppose. You know, I wouldn't recommend podcasters as a source of trust.
Yeah, and it's also down to your threat model, right? You know, if you are, just trying to avoid the porn laws, that's one way to take a look at it. You're not going to care as much about, that. If you are doing things that, this, current government finds illegal, then your threat model is different. And you're saying, well, maybe I want to find something that is established in a country that will not give my data to, the local government. So then you're looking for different things there. It's like, where is this housed? Is it in a country that has strong privacy laws? How easy it is for the U.S. government to send a subpoena and get that information. Even if it is just metadata, like I said, if your threat model includes doing things that the government might be interested in, then you're going to be looking at different things.
I think a couple of words have shown up here a couple of times, and I do want to make sure we get to many questions. But one of them is threat model. Isaac, can you define what a threat model is for us?
Boy, usually a threat model is, what are we trying to defend against? What is the attacker in this scenario? And sometimes the attacker is pretty broadly defined. It's all the hackers in the world ever.
Usually, in that case, you're pretty
Rude.
Mossad is very good at what they do.
Perhaps all the hackers who care to hack me and who I imagine.
That's going to be a little bit better.
But that's a great way of highlighting, why thinking about threat models are important. If you sit there and step back and say, I'm trying to secure against, the most advanced hackers in the world, you're going to fail, right? Is that there's always somebody smarter than you on the internet. But what is your particular threat model? What are you worried about? Thinking through, the data that you're going to be producing, the sites that you're going to be accessing, the things that you're communicating. If this were to get public, right, is it that your mom's going to be upset with you, or do you get arrested, right? And understanding the difference in those then leads you to pick different choices. And that's what we talk about threat modeling, is modeling the threat that you have to yourself so that you can then make the best decisions and not just go, I want to find the most secure VPN, right? It's because the answer there isn't a most secure whatever, right? It is what is most secure for you.
Right. So there's a couple of concepts I want to get across here. One of the most important ones, I think, is I haven't heard this term come up, but we've glanced at them a couple times, is safety and liveness. So in computer security, in academic computer security, we usually say, what sort of properties do you want your computer program your system, thank you, to have? And we can divide those properties into two basic types, and most things are some of both. Safety properties, which say something bad never happens, right? The bad guy never sees my password. And liveness properties would say something good eventually happens, right? Eventually the bank gets back to me with a signed response, right? So when we're talking about your threat model here, the threat, when Xavier is mentioning there's not a perfectly secure VPN, right? The most safe VPN is the VPN that doesn't let you access the internet. It's not very live, but it's very safe, right? So you're not balancing safety and liveness. And an attacker could be an attacker that's trying to deny you access to things, as well as an attacker who's trying to get you to access things that you don't want to access, or get you to tell things that you don't want to tell. So if you're worried about that, the doesn't let me on the internet VPN isn't helping, it's just hurting. The other thing is that we're often talking about an attacker power. So for instance, in the buffer overflow example, the attacker couldn't write to random parts of memory, but they could give you arbitrarily long inputs, and they could trick you into writing to your parts of memory. And this is really important because it tells you how you can defend against it. An attacker who can write any part of memory on my computer, no matter what, there's not a lot I can do about. But I can do things about making sure I don't get tricked into writing things to parts of memory I don't want things written to. All right, I think there's another question that's been waiting, so.
I'm curious more as a consumer, what's my responsibility to try to figure out how safe I'm being? Like, for example, the comment you made about make sure you have the right bank, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some sense, there's an ethics question here of how much of this is on the consumer's plate. And at the end of the day, it's your security, right? You get to decide how much you care about it, and there are plenty of unscrupulous people, or even semi-scrupulous people, who, if you say, I don't care, will listen. But I think that it is also, I mean, I teach students in computer science. We do talk about ethics a lot, and one of the things we talk about is trying to make things secure for users, right? You want to make it so that the user doesn't have to always be constant vigilant, because they won't be. And so you want, as a programmer, to write programs that don't require that of the user as much as possible. The problem is, I can say this is the ethical thing to do, but if somebody decides to write an unethical program, the only solution to that is constant vigilance.
And then there's the reality that there's vulnerabilities in everything, right? Is that we constantly have to patch, even if you have trusted software, even if you're going to trusted websites, there's still new holes that are found in it. So what I try to talk about is to say, setting up your, what is the worst that could happen? Right? Think about those things. And some of you might have gone through some of that, right? Getting your identity stolen, losing access to all of your photos and videos from your entire life, right? Losing access to an account which you communicate with most of the people in your life, right? I know lots of people that would absolutely die if they have lost their Insta account. And it happens all the time. And so understanding what is important to you, then you can step back and say, now what is my level of responsibility that I want to put into that and make it protected, right? Is like banking is one of those things where, especially if you have a home or a personal business and you are running, doing type of financial transactions, right? You can do simple things like just keep that on a separate computer, right? Don't try the new VPN that you heard from a podcaster on the same machine that you do your financial transactions. Figuring out, like I said, right? Think about your threat model, think about the bad things that can happen, and what little small things can I put in place to make it less likely to happen or not hurt as bad when it does.
We're talking a lot about accessing sites based on web access. What about an app, like a banking app? Is there something to look for to know that your banking app is secure, communicating? Like Fidelity, Truist.
I have bad news for you about those banking apps. They're all just websites wrapped up in mostly the same Selenium program.
Sometimes
Is there a way
we're
to
getting
check for what check to see if it's the same level of security?
Yeah.
In a better world, we would have some mechanism of seeing if the communication line that they're opening are doing the right things. There are even some proposals for Android permissions expanding on this app has permission to access the internet.
Actually, some of those have come into practice, and like Android has updated its permissions model over the last few years due to academic security experts going, these giant broad, do you want anybody to be able to access any network at all? It's just not actually that useful for users. But it is.
Well, my impression is that Android's you have permission to access specifically this server does in fact require, like the operating system will then check that when you are accessing that server, you were doing so in the standards compliant encrypted channel manner.
Yeah, that's a relatively recent thing, I think.
Yeah, I think that there's kind of two aspects to it. Are the apps you're downloading and using doing the things that it's supposed to do, right? Or are they doing more things that you don't want them to do, right? And that is what they're kind of talking about here, is that the Android and the other and iOS, they try to put in safeguards so that app developers aren't collecting more information than they should be, right? There was a article that where they found data being sold to insurance companies, auto insurance companies that, were increasing your rates based off of the speed and metadata pulled off of other apps, right? Things like the Gas
Waze.
Buddy app, right? Or but if you think about a mapping app, you expect them to do GPS, right? But I have Gas Buddy. Yeah, it looks for my closest things, but that thing was had accelerometer data, right? It let you know if you were braking too hard. All of that information got sold to the insurance companies, and that's a good use case of like I've got apps that are fairly legitimate, right? Gas Buddy was a legitimate app. Nobody was really tricking anybody on the wholesale. They just were like collecting a little bit more data than they really needed to do their job. And oh, look, we can make money off of that, as any company does, right? Figures out how to make more money. Then there's the other aspect of like, being tricked into downloading the wrong app. And in general, in the US, we are pretty safe here because we, for the most part, still use the default app stores, right? It's in English, therefore we don't have to worry about it. The rest of the world has a little bit more challenge where you're trying to get more localized applications into the hand of consumers, and you see that a lot more overseas.
The other thing I would point out is specifically for certain industries like banking, education, healthcare, there are regulatory reasons that people do try to make those a bit more secure. I'm not saying you can trust that completely, those are often implemented in the dumbest way somebody can possibly buy, but there are regulations that attempt to require this and that require some inspection.
So bottom line, is it better to use a banking app or just sign on to a banking website through your?
So yeah, let me answer that question.
How much do
quick.
you trust your banking?
The banking app is actually a little bit better. And so to just a real quick tangent there is that there is newer technology on the authentication side, using FIDO2 and what we call passkeys now. And the technology of making, trusting a device and the implications of that is that, we can do better about knowing that that a bad guy is trying to hack a website, right? You only get certain level of metadata, in our example, right? When we're sending packets, you only get TCP IP stuff. But if I'm coming from an app, I've got more context, right? I can trust the device and trust the user. That gives me more assurance that you are who you are, and I can let you do banking stuff. So the answer to your question is apps are more secure, and it just
in general. I mean, I think we should be very careful here not to say that is the end all be all.
Right. Yeah. I'm just saying.
Right now, in general,
all other things being equal, yes. Yeah. Apps are a little bit better.
And a good rule of thumb on the internet is remember, if the product is free, you are in fact the product. But you touched on advances in encryption. We've been talking about encryption a lot, which is at base just multiplication of very large prime numbers. With quantum computing, that's going to become at the end. What is the next step, the next evolution in encryption?
We have quantum safe crypto. It is slower, but it does exist. So in general, you talk about its multiplication of really large primes. That is the basis of several encryption schemes. But it turns out that the mathematical properties, I'll get just a little bit technical here. I think I will try to keep it as light as I can. The mathematical properties of primes that let you do encryption stuff is not unique to the primes. It's actually shared by a large number of mathematical objects. So if you hear about elliptic curve crypto, it's because a lot of those properties are also shared by points on elliptic curves. And it turns out that we know of objects like this that you can use to do crypto that have even more properties that we care about, some of which are, we believe, safe with quantum computers. I will point out that with crypto, everything is based on we believe, because we don't actually know about, who here has heard of the P versus NP problem? Okay, several people, but not everyone. So the question of the P versus NP problem is it true, we believe that it's true, or most of us do, most computer scientists believe that there are problems that it is easy to check and hard to solve, just fundamentally. There is no more clever way to come about solving it that makes it easy, as easy to solve as it is to check the solution.
Decrypting with passwords is one of these. It's traditionally easy to check if you got the right password, hard to solve what the right password is.
We don't actually know if that's true, though. We haven't been able to prove it mathematically. We're pretty sure it's true. It would be really weird if it wasn't.
I asked ChatGPT, it said it was true.
Yeah.
A little bit one. Yeah.
We believe that quantum computers actually allow you to solve some of these traditionally hard problems in an easy way.
But not
But not all of them. It changes which problems are hard and which are easy. Mostly it makes previously hard ones easy. But it does make all the previously hard ones easy. So it's a question of changing out which problems we're trying to ask people to solve to ones that quantum computers also find hard.
And the other aspect of the quantum computer encryption situation is that, we're moving into a direction where more and more of the encryption algorithms that we're using today are quantum safe. It's the fun is going to be all that data that's been collected out in the Utah data center, and other government and other huge data centers have been collecting all those encrypted packets over the last 10 years, and the access to that, right? That's going to be the biggest kind of shift in intelligence, is once we're able to start cracking that at scale. By the time we get there, our day-to-day encryption algorithms will probably be safe to use. So it's not a matter of like when the next 5-10 years we're going to be in this situation where we can't encrypt anything. What we're going to be in the situation is that governments will start to be able, and other entities will start to be able to decrypt the data that they have been collecting for the last 10 years, and that's gonna be a bigger shift.
Well,
I think we have time for one more question, or are we done?
Did you talk about which web browsers are more secure or less secure than others?
Which web browsers are more? So the question on more or less secure is anything that's being constantly updated, right?
Given your update.
Yeah, and given that you're keeping it updated, you're probably going to be okay on the security front. Privacy, whole nother topic. That's not today's topic, but yeah, from a security point of view, all the major browsers are kind of good there, but I don't think the biggest differentiator in browsers today is security. It's more privacy.
Yeah, I will say that the one thing about that is almost all browsers today run based on Chromium, which is the underlying behind Chrome, but it's also underlying behind Microsoft Edge, behind a whole bunch of other things. And that means that a lot of people are trying to attack it. Now, it's a security by obscurity argument. They're not actually great arguments a lot of the time, but this is one of the things that has led me recently to switch back to Firefox, because I just would prefer not to have everybody trying to attack my browser.
Yeah, there's basically two browsers, the Mozilla and Firefox, right? And then the Firefox clones. And I used a Firefox clone called LibreWolf is one of mine. So you want a good privacy browser. But yeah, it's either Chrome or Mozilla there.